Friends, it's Lacey. Happy Friday. I'm Lacey from Pandamonium Publishing House, and today we are doing a live on Instagram where I answer your publishing questions. So some of these have been sent in to me from email, and I thought that I would start with those first. But if you have any questions and you want to put them in the chat below, feel free to do that so I can get to those. Hopefully we can get to all of them. So I started Pandamonium Publishing House in 2015, and this is going to be our 10th year in business, which I'm so grateful for. And I'm really excited for all of the new things to come. And 2025 is going to be one of those years where we're busier than ever, and we really are publishing a ton of great stories. So if you have any questions, just as a reminder, put them in the comments below and I will try and get to them. But these are the ones that I've got from, for the most part, repetitively since the beginning of the year. So I'm going to start with, this is a great question. I've heard you say before that, what does it say? Authors' books are a jumping off point for their career. What does that mean? So I'm definitely going to expand on that for you and give you kind of some insight into why writing the book is just the beginning step, okay? So when you write a book, people tend to look at you as being an expert. They tend to look at you as having information, obviously, that you're familiar with, that you're sharing with others. So when you write a book, what happens is that you get a lot of different opportunities that come afterwards that are related to your book, but aren't necessarily all based on your book. So I'm talking about being a guest speaker at different universities and colleges, giving a talk on how you created your character arcs, for example, at a library, going into a school and doing a reading of your book, or teaching a workshop about how to make interesting conflicts, things like that. So once you write a book, the opportunities that come after that are huge, and you can charge for these opportunities. You can charge to go into a school or go into a classroom at a university and give your expertise on how you wrote your book and the methods behind it, whether it be outlining, whether it be character development, maybe it's how to write the perfect plot, those kind of things. So to say that the book is a jumping off point, that's what I mean, is that there are so many opportunities afterwards to kind of get into these spaces and share what you know with other people. Because if you have a question, or if you had a question about the writing process during your journey as an author, probably lots of other people are going to have the same questions too. So sharing that information and getting yourself out there and getting that exposure into how you write and what your methods are could be very helpful to those people who are beginning their writing journeys. So that was a really great question, and thank you for sending those in via email, but you can also put them in the comments below and I will try and get to them all. So the other one that we got that I get asked a lot is, what is developmental editing and editing? What are the differences? So this is a great question too, because developmental editing is when we go through your story and we're looking for things like character arcs and plot holes, and making sure that all of the questions you've posed are answered and wrapped up with a bow. And we want to make sure that the story makes sense from start to finish, that every single thing you've put in there has a development and has a growth of some kind. So for example, when we talk about character arcs, what that means is that we want to see that the character is not the same as the character they were at the beginning. So by the end of the book, they need to have changed in some way. They need to have grown. Not necessarily for the better either, but we need to see a progression or a regression, just as long as they're not the same as who they were at the beginning of your story. So developmental edits look for things like missing information. So we're going through and we're reading it as a reader to begin with. We're writing down the questions that we have that maybe you didn't answer, and we're giving you feedback on what needs to change in order for all of those loops to be closed, or all of that information to be resolved, all of those things that you've done to be wrapped up with a bow. Because there's nothing worse than reading a book and not having that feeling of satisfaction, where you've got to, see the characters progress and see them kind of come full circle and have those plot questions answered with the why behind what they've done. So with developmental edits, that's a huge difference. With regular editing, punctuation, grammar, spelling, sentence structure, all of that kind of stuff. So developmental editing is a completely different thing than regular editing for, punctuation and grammar and spelling. So developmental editing is essential. And a lot of people ask if they should have developmental edits done before they submit their work to a publisher. And your story should be pretty polished and should answer all the questions that you've posed throughout your manuscript, but we're not looking for perfection. We definitely want to see that you're capable, but you're not perfect. Nobody's a perfect writer. And anytime you finish a book, you look at it and you're like, oh, I could have done this differently, or I should have said that, or you know what, I actually had an idea of how to make this better. Every single artist does that. A work is never completed, it is abandoned. Okay, art is never completed, it's abandoned. I forget who said that, but I think that's a famous quote. So we just get to the point where we're like, you know what, this is our best, this is good enough, this is what we're submitting, and that's what publishers want to see. We want to see the effort, we want to see, obviously, that you have a good grasp of the English language if you're submitting to us. Obviously, there are other publishers that publish in different languages, so I wanted to differentiate that. We do publish some books in French. So the main thing is that we really want to see your effort put forward. We don't necessarily care about those things that are easily fixed. But that being said, there is time and effort and resources put into editing books and getting people the rewrites done and sending those back to you and having you do them. So there's time, effort, and resources involved in that. So the more polished your manuscript is, the better. So should you hire a developmental editor before submitting to a publisher? That's completely up to you. We do developmental editing in-house, so if it's something that your manuscript needs, I'm going to definitely recommend that for sure. And it's a case-by-case basis, of course. So, okay, the next question. I just have my notes here. What is the difference between a crime novel versus a mystery novel? This is a great question. Okay, so the crime novels focus on the act of the crime itself. So they focus on the consequences, they focus on the motivation behind the crime, why the person did what they did. And then they also explore the social and psychological dynamics as well as like the moral aspects of that crime being committed. And the criminal's perspective is usually something that we can see. I actually really love crime novels when you have it from the perspective of the criminal. I think that that's so cool. I think it's something that really lends to the excitement of the story when you can sit your reader right beside that criminal and have them kind of go through the thought process of committing that crime and why they're doing it and what the payoff is, what they hope to get out of it. So that's crime novels. And Mario Puzo, The Godfather, that's a crime novel, okay? Centers around organized crime with this mob family. So we all know the story, but that's a great example of a crime novel. So a mystery novel is figuring out the puzzle. It's putting the clues together. And usually we're following a detective or an amateur detective or an investigator. And we're following along as they kind of solve and unravel all of those clues that the author has left. So the main thing in a mystery novel is to uncover the who did it, okay? So That is the primary goal for mystery novels. And when we look at mystery novels, I mean, of course, Sherlock Holmes, right? That's what immediately comes to mind. So that's something where you can kind of differentiate. If you look at the difference between The Godfather and you look at the difference between Sherlock Holmes' series, then you're going to notice the differences right away. Okay, that's for sure. Okay, another question that we got. Like I said, if you want to put your questions in the bottom in the comments, you absolutely can, and I will try and get to those as best of my abilities. I have more questions here that were sent in via email to pandapublishing8@gmail.com. So if you want to send me a question there too, you absolutely can. Okay, so how do you choose manuscripts you publish, and what are you looking for right now for authors to submit? This is a great question. So I choose the manuscripts based on a whole bunch of things. So, for example, I will choose a manuscript that it has to have compelling characters, okay? I need to feel a connection to the character in some way or somehow. Even if you absolutely make me hate them, then that's a good sign, because there's a connection there. Whether you're rooting for that character or not, there's the connection where you're saying, okay, you know what, I don't like this person, but I get it. I understand why they're doing what they're doing, or, you know, I get the motivation behind their actions. So compelling characters for sure helps me pick manuscripts. Another thing is I want to see new solutions to old problems. So, for example, let's say that you have a different perspective that you're writing from, and you have a character, I don't know, who is afraid of monsters under the bed or bedtime, okay? So for kids' books, for example. What is the new solution to that old problem? Okay, that goes for romance, that goes for crime, that goes for every single genre. We like to see out of the box thinking. We like to see new perspectives. Publishers like to see books that kind of are able to transport you for sure, and able to sit you right beside that main character so that you experience what they're going through and you have empathy for the characters. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to love them. You can absolutely hate them. But the thing is that there's got to be a connection there. I want to make sure that I'm choosing manuscripts that are pretty close to the industry standards. So in terms of word count, you know, you don't want to send in a manuscript that is way below the word count, because how are we going to work with that? I'd much rather see something over where we can trim rather than something that is not long enough. So word count and industry standards are really important. Not necessarily following the formula, but we know that we have the introduction, we know that we have rising action, we know that we have the climax, we have falling action, and we also have the resolution that wraps everything up with a bow at the end of the story. So that's kind of the formula for all books. We have to have a problem that needs to be solved. We have to have characters that are going to solve it and what their motivation is behind it and who change throughout the story. So I also choose manuscripts based on who you are and the vision that aligns with our company. So we choose authors who, I'm going to Google you. Every single publisher will Google you when you put in a submission for anything. We want to know who you are. What is your story behind the story? What do you believe in? Who are you as a person? How are we going to work together? So that's why I talk to all my authors on the phone, or we'll have a Zoom meeting, or I'll meet them in person depending on where I am. And that is something that is really important to me, because I need to not only know the why behind you and what makes you tick, but also that you are going to fit in with our team and you're going to have the same vision for our company that we have. That's so important. So we have to make sure that everybody's cohesive. There's a lot of author events that we do, you know, where you're hanging out with each other in the booths and different things like that. So we got to make sure that, you know, there's a cohesiveness there and that everybody is doing the same thing. We're all rowing the boat in the same direction. So that's what I look for as well. I look for stories that are interesting and unique and diverse and have representation in them. Kids, for example, they need to see themselves on the page. So that is something that I look for in children's books manuscripts specifically. We want to make sure that we're representing different voices. So that's another thing that I look for. I look for fresh voices and interesting ideas. I want to make sure that I tell you what we're looking for right now. And you can send in your submissions. I'll tell you how to do that in a second, to pandapublishing8@gmail.com before I forget. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. What I usually do, we have our submission guidelines online, but you don't necessarily need to query me. Okay, so querying a publisher is like finding out what they're looking for. And I've just told you right now, maybe I didn't tell you. So we're looking for crime novels, we're looking for romance novels, and we're looking for middle grade, because that's kind of where we have gaps in our collection that we need to fill in. So by submitting those, you should follow the submission guidelines that are at pandamoniumpublishing.com. And what I want you to do is submit your first 3 pages. So if you're sending in a crime novel or a romance or a middle grade, that's what I'm looking for. I want you to paste the first 3 pages in the body of the email. I don't open attachments very often, okay, unless I'm familiar with the person. So send me the first 3 pages in the body of the email. Send me what your name is, who you are, why you wrote this story, how you think it's going to connect with readers, how you see it on the shelf in the marketplace, like what is it comparable to, so that I have a good idea of kind of what your vision is in terms of where it's being placed. Who's your target for this book? What are your goals? And how did you hear about us? That's a really good one to send in, because I'm always wondering, is our algorithm working? Is our Google working in terms of people searching us, stuff like that. So if you could include that, that would be really, really great. Okay, so what is your top piece of advice for aspiring authors? My number 1 piece of advice for aspiring authors is education. Always. It always has been and it always will be. Because the more that you can educate yourself in writing, and the more that you practice, and the more that you refine your skills, the better writer you become. So first of all, read as much as you can, read in multiple genres, read things that you normally wouldn't, because this is all going to expand what you know, okay? The other thing is education, of course. So take the writing courses, take the classes, take the workshops, take whatever you can get your hands on, because all of those resources are such a great thing in order to help you develop your craft, to help you get feedback. We offer a ton of courses, classes, and workshops. Pandamoniumpublishing.com. Go to the tab that says Learn with Us, and you'll be able to see it all there. So those are the things that I recommend for aspiring authors, because obviously you want to make sure that you're doing your best and that you're putting your best foot forward and that you're able to convey what you're trying to tell through your story in a way that's understandable and that's logical and that makes sense when following all of those things that you're going to learn. Like, there's a very specific formula for writing kids' books. There's a very specific thing that we want to see when we're doing crime novels, for example. Remember, we talked about the difference between crime and mystery novels. So things like that are really important, and we have to ensure that, you are submitting the very best version of your manuscript to help your chances get published, okay? So education for aspiring authors and current authors is the most important thing. I do something like, the last time I checked, I think it was like 400 hours of continuing education in different subjects. So consumer neuroscience and neuromarketing, publishing and the trends that are coming up, writing, developmental editing, all of these things that I need knowledge in, I'm constantly trying to improve my skills so that we can move forward with the future of publishing and all the things that are changing in publishing, especially with the introduction of AI. So, which is scary. And I just want to be clear, for the record, I will never publish a book written by AI. Okay? That is something that I stand firmly on. There's a lot of different techniques and things and, different ways of doing things that we'll try and we'll experiment with but we will never, ever have books that are written by AI. You can't capture the spirit of humanity. You can't capture the essence of what humans are able to do. You can't capture dreams. You can't capture, their personality on the page. So that's why we will never, ever have books written by AI. We might experiment with certain things, but that is definitely not one of them. So how do we check for this? We have ways and methods of checking to see if your book has been sent in by AI. And you know what? Honestly, as a publisher, after reading so many manuscripts over the last 10 years, you can tell. You can really tell when somebody has poured their heart and soul onto the page and they have lived experience versus something that's been generated by AI. Okay, so there are measures in place, but there are also just the feel of it from reading it. So remember, don't submit AI stuff, okay? Okay, what else? So we went through the education, we went through the differences, we went through developmental editing. Okay. What are you reading right now? What am I reading right now? Manuscripts. That is what I'm reading. Manuscript after manuscript. So I love what I'm able to do. I love that I get to read all different kinds of books, but manuscripts are what is taking up my time right now. When I read for leisure, I try to read something that's nonfiction. I try to read something that, is business-based or moving the company forward. I try to read things that I normally wouldn't. So, for example, fantasy genre. Maybe I'm going to read true crime. Maybe I'm going to read romance. Some of those different books that I don't necessarily get to read very often are what I'll focus on. So those are the books that I'm reading right now. I haven't had time this year yet to actually sink my teeth into a book. But I've been reading manuscripts. So you're going to see a lot of new books coming out this year. I'm super excited. I think we're going to be up to 50 authors in 2025. And this is our 10th year in business, which I'm so excited for. And I really hope that you're enjoying the books that we're putting out there by different authors and different voices, and that you're enjoying the content of those books and that they're making you think. So that's kind of our goal. Another question I got was, what do you like best about your job? So the thing that I love best about Pandamonium Publishing House is definitely my team of authors. They are amazing in so many different ways, and they're each unique to themselves. They each have different ways and perspectives of how they see the world. And it really comes across on the page of how they're writing. So every single book that's written has pieces of the author left on the pages. And I think that's such a cool thing because of the fact that everybody is so special in their own way. And you might have two similar experiences, but nothing can be told from your perspective because that's how you see the world. So nothing can be told other than from your perspective because of the way that you see the world and your beliefs and all of those things. So that's what I love most about Pandamonium Publishing House, is that I get to have an amazing team of authors who each bring something different to this company. I also love the fact that we focus on literacy, and literacy is one of our main goals. So getting those books into the hands of kids as soon as possible, because we know how important that is, and how illiteracy is linked to higher crime rates, higher mortality rates, higher rates of just not living a good life. And when we focus on literacy and getting those great books into the hands of kids, we really feel like we're making a difference because we're touching on topics that they can see themselves on the pages. They can see the representation of themselves on the pages and on the illustrations. We also make sure that we're touching on subjects that maybe they haven't had experience with. So, for example, I just wrote a book called Your Mind is a Garden, and it's about the subconscious mind versus the conscious mind, and how we plant seeds of positivity, and how sometimes those negative thoughts are weeds that need to be pulled. So, different concepts and things like that. So, the creative factor of what we do at Pandamonium Publishing House is definitely something that I love. And I also love the challenge of trying to make sure that this is a longevity thing, so that we're in business for a really long time, because there are so many stories to tell. So working on all of those things, meeting new people, making friendships, spending time in schools and reading our books and seeing our authors thrive, those are the things that I love about this company and about my job. This is my purpose. This is something that I'm not just doing as a job. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I fully believe that. So I hope that you feel that way too, authors. You can put your comments in the bottom if you have any questions for me. So far, no one has added any comments in the question section. So if there's nothing else that you want to know right now, we can do another live sometime. And it's pandamoniumpublishing.com and learn with us, where you can find our educational courses, classes, and workshops. You can find the submission guidelines at pandamoniumpublishing.com as well. And remember that we're looking for crime novels, romance, and middle grade novels right now. So send those in to me. And make sure that you check back with us, because we have tons of new releases coming out. And 2025 is going to be a huge year because it's our 10th anniversary. And there's things that I'm kind of planning behind the scenes. So have a really happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions for me after the fact, you can always reach us at pandapublishing8@gmail.com. Happy Friday, happy Live with Lacey, and maybe I'll see you again soon.